Rejection. It's something we all face, yet no one really prepares us for. It hits hard, like a storm rolling in out of nowhere, leaving you cold, exposed, and wondering what you could have done differently. Maybe it was someone you admired, maybe it was someone you loved, maybe it was an opportunity you thought was yours. And in that moment, rejection feels final. It feels personal. It feels like the ground beneath your feet has shifted, leaving you off balance and unsure of yourself. Let's be honest. What's the first thing you want to do when you're rejected? You want to react. Maybe it's sending that long text explaining your side. Maybe it's trying to convince them they made a mistake. Or maybe it's lashing out in anger, trying to regain some of the power you feel you've lost. But here's the hard truth. Every word you speak in those moments, every attempt to chase, explain, or retaliate only confirms one thing, that they were right to walk away. But what if you chose a different path? What if, instead of reacting, you chose silence? I'm not talking about avoiding your feelings or pretending you don't care. I'm talking about deliberate, intentional silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than any words ever could. Imagine for a moment, they reject you, and instead of pleading for their attention or trying to prove your worth, you simply step back. No calls, no messages, no explanations. Just calm, quiet, resolute silence. And here's the twist. While you focus on yourself, your silence begins to work its way into their mind. At first, they might feel relief. After all, they expected you to react. But as the hours turn to days, and the days turn to weeks, that silence starts to haunt them. They wonder why you didn't chase after them. They question if they underestimated you. And most importantly, they begin to sit with their own decision in a way they never expected. You see, silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's an active force. It creates a void, a space for reflection, doubt, and even regret. This is the power of silence, and it's a power that's deeply rooted in two profound systems of thought: the ancient wisdom of Stoicism and the psychological insights of dark psychology. Stoicism teaches us that true strength comes from mastering what is within our control, our reactions, our emotions, our choices. And dark psychology shows us that silence can be one of the most disarming tools in human interaction, creating a psychological impact far greater than confrontation ever could. But let me make something clear. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about manipulation. This is about you. It's about reclaiming your power in a moment when it feels like you've lost it. It's about understanding that rejection is not a reflection of your worth, but an opportunity to show the world and yourself just how resilient you are. So, if you've ever felt the pain of rejection, if you've ever wondered how to respond when someone turns their back on you, this video is for you. We're going to explore why silence after rejection isn't just powerful, it's transformative. We'll uncover how Stoicism teaches you to stay calm and composed, and how dark psychology reveals the incredible psychological impact of saying nothing. By the end of this video, you'll see silence not as a void, but as your greatest weapon in the face of rejection. So, if you're ready to stop chasing, start healing, and reclaim your power, stay with me. And if you feel inspired already, drop this phrase in the comments: "My silence is my strength." Let's show the world that we're not just surviving rejection, we're mastering it. Now, let's begin. Rejection. It's one of the most universal human experiences, and yet it feels so deeply personal every time it happens. No matter how many times we go through it, it always seems to hit us right where it hurts the most. And here's the thing, rejection doesn't just sting because someone says no. It stings because it challenges something fundamental, our sense of worth. It's not just the rejection of a relationship, an opportunity, or a connection. It feels like a rejection of us. When someone turns their back on you, whether it's a romantic partner, a friend, or even a job opportunity, your mind goes into overdrive. You start replaying every interaction, overanalyzing every detail, asking yourself, what did I do wrong? It's human nature to want to fix things, to want answers, to want closure, and in that moment, the natural reaction is to act, to reach out, to explain, to try and change their mind. But here's the truth no one tells you. The more you try to convince someone to stay, the more they believe they made the right decision by leaving. Why? Because your reaction, your words, your pleading, your explanations, all come from a place of desperation. And desperation is not attractive. It doesn't communicate strength. It communicates insecurity, and insecurity only reinforces their rejection. Now let's step back for a moment. What if, instead of reacting impulsively, you did the opposite? What if you chose not to engage at all? What if you chose silence? The ancient Stoics understood something profound about human nature. You can't control what others do, but you can always control your response. Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And that reaction, or lack of reaction, can change everything. Silence, when used deliberately, is not passive. It's a statement. It says, I don't need to chase you. I don't need to explain myself. I don't need to prove my worth to anyone because I already know my value. This is where the power of Stoicism comes into play. It's about choosing calm over chaos, control over impulsivity, and self-respect over validation. But silence doesn't just serve you. It also has a profound psychological impact on the one who rejected you. Dark psychology reveals that silence is one of the most disarming tools you can use in human interaction. When someone expects a reaction and receives none, it creates a void, a vacuum that their mind feels compelled to fill. They start wondering why you didn't fight for them. They question if they made a mistake. They begin to doubt their decision, not because of anything you said, but because of what you didn't say. This is the power of silence. It's a tool that serves you in two ways. It protects your peace and dignity, while also creating space for the one who rejected you to sit with their own decisions. And in that space they often begin to realize that your silence is louder than any words could ever be. Take a moment to think about this. Reflect on a time when you reacted to rejection. What did it cost you? Emotionally, mentally, maybe even your sense of self-worth. Now imagine how different things could have been if you had chosen to remain silent. If this is resonating with you, drop a comment below that says, "Silence is my power." Let's remind ourselves that we don't need to react to prove our worth. And stay with me, because next, we're diving into how silence doesn't just reflect strength. It actively shifts the power dynamic in your favor. Now let's talk about why silence, when viewed through the lens of Stoicism, is one of the most powerful responses you can ever give. Think about it. When someone rejects you, they expect a reaction. They expect an emotional outburst, an argument, maybe even an attempt to win them back. Why? Because most people are controlled by their emotions. They act on impulse, letting their feelings drive their actions. But what happens when you do the opposite? What happens when, instead of reacting, you choose stillness? That's when real power begins. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They believed that true strength comes from mastering yourself, not the people around you, not the events in your life, but your own mind and your own emotions. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic philosopher, said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Let that sink in for a moment. You can't control someone else's choice to reject you, but you can always control how you respond. And silence is the ultimate expression of that control. Silence communicates something that words can't. Self-mastery. It says, I don't need to react. I don't need to prove myself to you. I am in control of my emotions, and I won't let your decision define me. When you choose silence, you're not just withholding words, you're making a statement. You're showing that your peace, your dignity, and your self-worth are non-negotiable. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Silence doesn't just protect your own peace. It has a psychological impact on the person who rejected you. When someone expects a reaction and gets nothing, it throws them off balance. It forces them to confront their own actions without the distraction of your words. They start to wonder, why didn't they respond? Why didn't they fight for me? Did I misjudge them? Your silence creates space for doubt to creep in, and that doubt can be far more powerful than any argument you could make. Think of it like this. When you stay silent, you're stepping out of the emotional battlefield. You're no longer playing their game, and when you refuse to play, you can't lose. Instead, you stand firm, unshaken, and in control of yourself. That's the essence of Stoicism, not letting external events dictate your internal state. Now, this isn't easy. Silence requires discipline. It requires you to sit with your emotions, to resist the urge to react, and to trust that your restraint will serve you in the long run. But once you master this, it changes everything. You no longer feel the need to chase validation or prove your worth, because you know your value doesn't depend on someone else's opinion. So here's the takeaway. Silence isn't weakness, it's strength. It's not avoidance, it's intentionality. And it's not about them, it's about you. It's about reclaiming your power, protecting your peace, and showing the world and yourself that you are in control. If this resonates with you, drop this in the comments. I control my reactions. Let's remind ourselves that true power doesn't come from winning arguments or chasing validation. It comes from mastering ourselves. And if you're ready to take this even further, stay tuned, because next, we're diving into the psychological impact your silence has on the one who rejected you. This is where things get really interesting. Let's take things a step deeper and explore the emotional impact your silence has, not just on you, but on the person who rejected you. This is where the principles of dark psychology come into play, and it's fascinating to see how silence, something so simple and often underestimated, can completely shift the dynamics of human interaction. Here's what you need to understand. When someone rejects you, they often expect, and are prepared for, a reaction. They're ready for your anger, your sadness, your attempts to explain or fix things. In a way, your reaction reassures them because it shows them that they still hold power over you. But when you choose silence, you take that power back. And that silence? It's not just an absence of words, it's a presence. A loud, undeniable presence that forces them to sit with their own actions. Silence creates a psychological void. The human mind doesn't like voids. When there's no response, the brain starts filling in the gaps. And that's where things get interesting. The person who rejected you begins to question their decision. They ask themselves, why didn't they react? Were they not as invested as I thought? Did I misjudge them? Your silence plants seeds of doubt, and those seeds grow every time you remain quiet. Let's break it down further. One of the key principles of dark psychology is that people are most unsettled when they don't get the reaction they expect. It's called cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort people feel when their expectations don't match reality. They expected you to fight for them, to react emotionally. Instead, you gave them nothing, and that nothing forces them to confront their own emotions, their own insecurities, and their own doubts. It's a mirror they can't look away from, but it doesn't stop there. Your silence also changes the narrative in their mind. They begin to wonder if rejecting you was a mistake. They might start to romanticize the idea of you, not because you said or did anything, but because your absence speaks volumes. Silence allows them to project their own thoughts onto you, and those projections are often far more powerful than anything you could have said. Now, I want to be clear. This isn't about manipulation or revenge. This is about understanding the natural psychological dynamics at play. Your silence isn't about making them suffer. It's about protecting your peace and maintaining your dignity. The emotional impact it has on them is just a byproduct. And here's where it all ties back to you. While they're sitting with their doubts and insecurities, you're moving forward. You're growing stronger, finding clarity, and rediscovering your worth. The power of silence isn't just in what it does to them, it's in what it does for you. So the next time you're faced with rejection, remember this. Silence isn't weakness. It's not running away. It's creating space for them to confront their decisions and for you to reclaim your power. And as you let that silence work its magic, you'll find that the person who rejected you starts to feel the weight of their own choice in ways you never could have forced with words. If this hits home for you, type "Silence speaks louder" in the comments below. Let's remind ourselves that we don't need to chase, argue, or explain. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all. Stay tuned, because next we're diving into how rejection is actually an opportunity to redirect your energy and transform your life. Now that we've explored the emotional impact of silence, let's shift our perspective. What if I told you that rejection isn't a setback, but a redirection? That it's not the end of the road, but a sign pointing you toward a new path, one that's often far better than the one you were clinging to. In the moment, rejection feels like a door slamming shut. But what you don't see, what the pain of that moment blinds you to, is that silence opens other doors, doors that lead to something even greater, your growth. The Stoics had a profound way of reframing adversity. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, rejection isn't an obstacle, it's an opportunity. It's a chance to stop chasing what isn't meant for you and start focusing on what is. But here's the key. To seize that opportunity, you need to stop reacting and start redirecting. And silence is your first step in that process. When someone rejects you, your initial instinct might be to fight for them, to explain why they're wrong, or to fix what you think is broken. But let's be honest, what does that actually achieve? It wastes your energy. It drags you further into the emotional chaos of the situation. And most importantly, it keeps you stuck in the past. Silence, on the other hand, allows you to break free. It creates the space you need to step back, reassess, and redirect your energy toward yourself. Think about it like this. Every ounce of energy you spend chasing someone who's already walked away is energy you could be using to build something better. That might mean working on your physical health, pursuing your goals, or reconnecting with the people who truly value you. Rejection gives you clarity. It shows you where not to invest your time and effort. And silence allows you to focus on that clarity without distractions. Here's another way to look at it. When you stop reacting to rejection, you regain control. You're no longer playing by their rules, you're setting your own. And in doing so, you transform rejection from something that breaks you into something that builds you. This is the power of redirection, taking the energy that was once tied to someone else's opinion of you and channeling it into your own growth. But here's the catch. This doesn't happen overnight. Silence isn't just about staying quiet. It's about choosing to sit with your emotions, to reflect on what rejection is teaching you, and to make a conscious decision to move forward. It's about saying to yourself, I'm not going to waste another moment chasing someone who doesn't see my value. I'm going to use this moment to become even stronger. And here's the beautiful irony. When you redirect your energy toward yourself, it changes everything. Not just for you, but for the person who rejected you. While you're growing, thriving, and rediscovering your worth, they're left to wonder if they underestimated you. And maybe, just maybe, they realize they made a mistake. But by that point, it doesn't matter anymore, because your silence has already carried you far beyond where their rejection left you. So, let this sink in. Rejection is not the end, it's a redirection, and silence is the compass that helps you find your way forward. If this resonates with you, type "Rejection fuels my growth" in the comments below. Let's remind ourselves that every rejection is an opportunity to become stronger, wiser, and more focused. Stay with me, because next, we're diving into why silence isn't just a response. It's a strategy that shifts the entire power dynamic. Let's dive deeper into why silence isn't just an absence of sound. It's a presence, a force that can be louder than any words you could ever say. Think about this. When someone rejects you, they expect you to react. They expect you to plead, to argue, to seek closure. And when you give them none of that, when you respond with nothing but calm silence, you disrupt their entire narrative. Here's why this works. Silence is unsettling. It creates a void, and that void demands to be filled. But since you've chosen not to fill it, they're left with their own thoughts, their own doubts, their own insecurities. Suddenly, the power dynamic shifts. They're no longer in control of the situation. You are. Your silence forces them to question everything. They ask themselves, why didn't they respond? Why aren't they fighting for me? Did I make a mistake? And those questions can be far more haunting than anything you could say. Here's an example to help you understand this better. Imagine standing in a room full of people arguing. Everyone is shouting, trying to make their point, trying to be heard. And then, in the middle of all that chaos, one person stops. They go completely silent. Suddenly, all eyes are on them. Why? Because their silence demands attention in a way that shouting never could. That's the power of silence. It cuts through the noise. It commands respect. And it leaves a lasting impression. But silence doesn't just affect them. It transforms you. When you choose not to react, you reclaim your peace. You show yourself, and the world, that your emotions are not controlled by someone else's actions. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca said, a man is as miserable as he thinks he is. Silence allows you to break free from the misery of overthinking and emotional reactivity. It gives you space to focus on what truly matters, your own growth and well-being. And here's the irony. While you're finding peace in your silence, they're losing theirs. Every unanswered text, every moment of quiet, it all amplifies their uncertainty. They start to replay the situation in their mind, filling in the gaps with assumptions, fears, and regrets. And the more they think, the more your silence speaks. It tells them, I am stronger than you expected. I don't need to prove myself to you. My worth doesn't depend on your opinion. This is why silence is so powerful. Words can be misinterpreted. Arguments can be twisted. But silence is pure. It's undeniable. It's a statement of strength that leaves no room for debate. And in a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, silence makes you stand out. Now, this isn't about playing games or manipulating anyone. It's about recognizing the power of restraint, the strength of choosing peace over conflict, and the value of letting actions, or in this case, non-actions, speak louder than words. Silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's understanding that sometimes the most impactful response is no response at all. So the next time someone rejects you, remember this. Your silence doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care more about yourself. It doesn't mean you've given up. It means you're moving forward. And it doesn't mean you're powerless. It means you've chosen to wield a different kind of power. If this resonates with you, type, "My silence speaks volumes" in the comments below. Let's remind ourselves that we don't need to argue, plead, or explain. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is, nothing. Stay with me, because next, we're going to explore how your silence can actually make them start to crumble under the weight of their own decisions. Now let's talk about what happens to them when you go silent. It's not something they expect, and it's definitely not something they're prepared for. At first, they might feel relief. They might think, good, I don't have to deal with an emotional reaction. But as time passes, your silence starts to feel heavy. It lingers in their mind, growing louder and louder until it becomes almost unbearable. This is when they begin to crumble. Here's why this happens. Humans are wired to seek closure. When someone rejects you, they're often looking for validation of their decision. They expect you to react in a way that confirms their choice, whether it's anger, sadness, or desperation. But when you don't react, you deny them that validation. You leave them hanging in a state of uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the most uncomfortable emotions a person can experience. Think about this. When you stay silent, they have no idea what's going through your mind. Are you hurt? Are you angry? Do you care at all? Your silence forces them to fill in the blanks, and more often than not, they fill those blanks with their own fears and insecurities. They start asking themselves questions they didn't expect to ask. Did I underestimate them? Were they stronger than I thought? Did I make a mistake? And the longer your silence lasts, the louder those questions become. This is where dark psychology comes into play. One of the most powerful psychological tools you can use is ambiguity. When someone can't figure you out, it creates a sense of unease. They replay every interaction in their mind, trying to piece together what went wrong. They start overthinking, doubting their choices, and second-guessing themselves. Your silence becomes the backdrop for their internal chaos. But here's the thing, they're not just questioning the situation, they're questioning themselves. Silence has a way of reflecting their own insecurities back at them. Maybe they rejected you because they thought you weren't good enough. But now, they're wondering if they weren't good enough for you. Maybe they thought you'd be devastated without them, but your calm and quiet response tells a different story. And that story, that you're stronger, more composed, and more self-assured than they imagined, starts to haunt them. Here's a simple analogy. Imagine you throw a ball at a wall, expecting it to bounce back. But instead of bouncing back, the ball gets absorbed into the wall, leaving nothing behind. You're left standing there, confused, wondering why your actions didn't have the expected effect. That's what your silence does. It absorbs their rejection without giving them the reaction they anticipated. And in that void, they're left to wrestle with their own emotions. But while they're overthinking and second-guessing, what are you doing? You're moving on. You're focusing on your growth, your peace, and your goals. Your silence gives you the space to heal and grow stronger, while they're stuck replaying the same scenario in their mind. And that's the ultimate irony. The person who rejected you starts to feel the weight of their own decision, while you're already miles ahead, building a life they're no longer a part of. So remember this. Your silence isn't just about protecting your peace. It's about creating a space where they're forced to confront their own choices. And in that space, they often crumble under the weight of their own uncertainty. If this resonates with you, type "I am unshakable" in the comments below. Let's remind ourselves that we don't need to chase, argue, or prove anything. Silence speaks for us, and its impact is far greater than any words could ever be. Stay tuned, because next, we're diving into practical steps to master the art of silence and make it your most powerful tool. Now that we've uncovered the power of silence and its emotional impact, you might be wondering, how do I actually master the art of silence? It's one thing to understand its power, but when you're in the heat of the moment, when rejection stings and emotions run high, it's a lot harder to stay composed. That's why mastering silence takes practice, discipline, and a clear strategy. So, let's break it down into practical steps you can start using today. Step 1. Pause before you react. This is the foundation of mastering silence. When rejection hits, your first instinct might be to lash out, defend yourself, or seek clarity. But here's the truth. Reacting impulsively only gives away your power. The Stoics teach us to create space between stimulus and response. When you feel the urge to react, take a deep breath and remind yourself, I control my reaction, not them. This moment of pause is your first act of silence. Step 2. Detach emotionally. This one's tough but necessary. Rejection feels personal, But it's often more about them than it is about you. Maybe they have their own fears, insecurities, or reasons that have nothing to do with your worth. Remind yourself that their decision doesn't define your value. Practice emotional detachment by focusing on what you can control: your thoughts, your actions, and your growth. Step 3. Remove their access to you. Silence isn't just about what you say, it's about creating boundaries. If they rejected you, they don't need instant access to your life anymore. That might mean unfollowing them on social media, muting their notifications, or even blocking their number if necessary. This isn't about being petty, it's about protecting your peace. Silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of boundaries. Step 4. Focus on self-improvement. Here's the secret to making silence your superpower. It's not just about them, it's about you. Use the energy you would have spent chasing them to invest in yourself. Hit the gym, pick up a new skill, dive into a passion project. Every step you take toward becoming a better version of yourself is a step further away from the pain of rejection. And trust me, nothing speaks louder than a person who's thriving in their own lane. Step 5. Stay consistent. Silence loses its power if you break it too soon. There might be moments when you're tempted to reach out, to check on them, to see if they've noticed your absence. Resist that urge. Silence works because it creates space and mystery. Breaking that silence too soon erases all the progress you've made. Stay consistent and let time do its work. Step 6. Reflect and reframe. Finally, use this time of silence to reflect on the situation. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this rejection? How can I grow from this experience? Reframe rejection not as a loss, but as an opportunity for redirection. Every time you choose silence, you're choosing yourself. You're choosing to grow stronger, wiser, and more in control. And here's the most beautiful part. Mastering silence isn't just about handling rejection. It's a skill that will serve you in every area of life. Whether it's a difficult conversation, a moment of conflict, or a tough decision, the ability to remain calm, composed, and silent is a sign of true strength. So, if you're ready to take back your power and make silence your greatest weapon, start with these steps. And remember, this isn't about playing games or seeking revenge. It's about reclaiming your peace, protecting your energy, and showing the world and yourself that you are unshakable. If you're committed to mastering the art of silence, drop "I choose peace" in the comments below. Let's remind ourselves that true strength isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, and unyielding. Stay with me, because next, we're going to explore how silence isn't just a tool for you. It's a reflection of your growth and transformation. Now that we've explored the practical steps to mastering silence, let's take a moment to shift the focus. It's easy to get caught up in how your silence affects them, how it unsettles them, makes them question their choices, and forces them to confront their own insecurities. But here's the truth. Silence isn't just about them. In fact, it's not about them at all. It's about you. Your silence is a reflection of your growth, your strength, and your transformation. When someone rejects you, it feels like they're taking something away from you. Your confidence, your hope, maybe even your sense of worth. But the reality is, no one can take those things from you unless you allow it. Your silence is a way of saying, "I don't need your validation to know my value." It's a declaration of independence, not from them, but from the need for external approval. Think about it. Why do we chase people who reject us? Why do we fight for relationships or opportunities that no longer serve us? It's because we've been conditioned to seek validation outside of ourselves. But here's what the Stoics knew. True peace comes from within. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." Your silence is a step toward that freedom. It's a way of breaking free from the cycle of seeking validation and learning to find your worth within. But let's take it even further. Your silence isn't just an act of self-respect, it's an act of self-care. By choosing not to engage, you're protecting your energy. You're giving yourself the space to heal, to reflect, and to grow. And in that space, something incredible happens. You start to realize that rejection isn't as devastating as it felt in the moment. You start to see it for what it really is: a redirection, a chance to realign with your true path. And here's the best part. As you grow stronger in your silence, you begin to notice something else. The person who rejected you no longer holds the same power over you. Their opinion, their decision, their absence. It all starts to fade into the background. Why? Because you've chosen to focus on yourself. You've chosen to prioritize your own peace and happiness over their approval, and that choice, that's where real power lies. Here's a question for you. What if rejection was never about them at all? What if it was a lesson meant to teach you something about yourself? A chance to grow, to rise above, and to rediscover your own strength. That's what silence gives you. It gives you the clarity to see rejection not as an ending, but as a beginning of a new chapter where you are in control. So, the next time you're tempted to break your silence, ask yourself this: is this about them, or is this about me? If it's about them, stay silent. If it's about you, use that silence to focus on your growth, your healing, and your future. Because at the end of the day, silence isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about proving to yourself that you are strong enough to choose peace over chaos. If this resonates with you, drop "I am my own strength" in the comments below. Let's remind ourselves that rejection doesn't define us. Our response does. And if you're ready to embrace the power of silence as a tool for your own transformation, stay tuned, because in the final section, we're going to wrap it all up with an empowering message you won't want to miss. So, here we are at the end of this journey. We've explored rejection, silence, and the profound strength that comes from mastering your response. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this, it's this: rejection is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of a new one. And silence is the pen you use to write that story. When someone rejects you, it's tempting to believe the worst: that you weren't enough, that you failed, that you need to fight for their approval to feel whole again. But the truth is, rejection isn't about your worth, it's about their perspective. And perspective can change. Your silence becomes the mirror that forces them to reflect on their actions, their choices, and their own insecurities. But while they're lost in that reflection, you're not standing still. You're moving forward. Your silence says so much more than words ever could. It says, "I am strong, I am composed, I am in control of my own life." It says, "I don't need your validation because I've found my own." And most importantly, it says, "I choose peace, I choose growth, I choose me." That's a message they'll hear loud and clear, even if you never say a single word. But let's not forget the most important part of this journey. It's not about them, it's about you. Your silence isn't just a strategy, it's a reflection of your strength, your wisdom, and your ability to value yourself above anyone else's opinion. It's a declaration of independence from the need for external approval and a commitment to finding peace within. Here's what I want you to remember. Rejection isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace. Every rejection is an opportunity to grow stronger, to become wiser, and to get closer to the life you're meant to live. And your silence is the space where that transformation happens. It's where you heal, where you reflect, and where you rise. So, as you move forward, let your silence speak for you. Let it remind the world and yourself that you are unshakable, that you are worthy, not because of someone else's validation, but because of your own, and that no amount of rejection can take away the power you hold.